Your first date, your first kiss, your first sexy time, your first miniature, your first founding, whatever. You always remember your first. This is Spruce and Studs, and today we are going to be taking a look at the first action figure that was ever produced for the Warhammer 40K line. And I obviously missed out on the initial offering that I believe Games Workshop did a couple years ago. I can't remember exactly when, but like I said, I completely missed that. But now we are going to make up for it. And which figure are we going to review today? We're going to be taking a look at the Bandai Ultramarines Primaris Intercessor that came out years ago. And I'm very excited to see what Bandai has to offer, so let's dive right into the review.
The founding figure unboxing.
Ahead of us we have the Space Marine action figure that started it all for everybody. The Bandai Primaris Ultramarine Intercessor. Now let's take a very close look at this action figure that we have on our hands, focusing in on the head region as we normally do. We see a lot of shading that's going on up here. So you got shading where it's supposed to be in these recesses, shading over here. So it's nice that Bandai put a lot of effort into their action figure. Got a nice gold skull up here. The lenses, I would have to say, are very interesting to me. I don't know, for some odd reason, the lenses, while they are very nicely painted, they look a little bit too, I don't know, closely set. I'm not exactly too sure what is it about these Bandai action figures, but they almost give like a kind of a cartoony kind of feel. So moving on to the broad shoulders of the Space Marine, we still have your characteristic company on the right pauldron, and there is nice gold outlining all around this pauldron. And then on the other side, you have your characteristic Ultramarine symbol and more gold outlining over here. Now, as we look at the center of this action figure, we get a very nicely printed Insignia right here. And this Insignia actually does not have any shading whatsoever on it. However, underneath, you do get to see a bunch of shading down here. So we are going to just take a look at the arms itself. Lots of shading in the recessed areas or along the edges of the armor panel, which give a lot more depth to the action figure rather than just leaving it completely plain blue. I think if they left this a flat blue, this would be a very, very boring action figure to look at. So in the middle section of this action figure, you have plenty of detail right here that it seems a lot more pronounced than your regular McFarlane or Joy Toy action figure for some reason. So let's take a look at the lower half of this Ultramarine, and once again, a bunch of shading on the outside of these panels. You can see it very clearly here. And then on the knee part, it's perfectly shaded down here. And as you turn this action figure around, you see this one singular accessory pouch. This action figure has a bunch of cool designs on the back that seem a little bit more pronounced than Joy Toy or McFarlane. We will put this Space Marine down and take a look at the accessories that it came with. And as I bought this on the used marketplace, this one is obviously missing one of the vents here, so it's not a big deal. But as we are looking at this backpack, it's cool that they have a Ultramarine symbol straight in the middle. Aside from that, this is pretty much it to the backpack. The vents have no shading whatsoever. However, you do get to see some shading in these recesses down here. You flip this over, and once again, it is your regular backpack. This action figure also comes with two separate hands over here. And as you can tell, these hands are made to hold the combat knife as well as the bolt rifle, as opposed to the two fists that you see over here. And speaking of the accessories, let's take a look at this combat knife. So I'll have to say that this combat knife actually has a lot of depth again. You get to see shading up here, shading down here where the hilt of this knife is, and then you can see this gradual transition to a lighter gunmetal. And at the end of this combat knife, it is completely flat black. Now we will take a look at this bolt rifle. So this bolt rifle is actually really cool. There is a lot of detail that is into it. So with the scope, you get to see some red on the lenses. How about on the back part? Nope. If this is not lensed, it is deeply recessed. And the casing is a nice, cool-looking metallic black color, which I haven't seen before. And they've got this nice double Aquila over here that stands prominently in gold. And the rest of the accessories around this area, it is a dark gunmetal color. So to me, this is a very, very highly detailed bolt rifle, and probably could be my favorite out of all of the action figures that I have reviewed thus far. So let's find out the action in this action figure and see how this guy moves compared to his other action figure cousins. So around the head area, you're still going to get 360 degrees of movement, and there is plenty of wobble back and forth, as you can see, back and forth, and then up and down like this. It looks like there is a separate ball and socket joint that's in between, as well as a kind of a plate, almost like the McFarlane action figure down here with this black section that you can move back and forth. And then with the pauldrons, it almost reminds me of a Joy Toy version 1, where you have this joint that kind of pulls out like this. As you can see here, there is a joint right here, and then it attaches to a ball and socket joint. It's a little bit hard to tell, but there's a ball and socket joint right here in which it attaches to. So there's a lot of mobility actually with this pauldron. You can just push it out and then wobble it back and forth. And then about the shoulder area, it is a smooth gliding 360 degrees. You can rotate the forearms 360 degrees right here. And then with the elbows, it is double jointed. You can push this in once and push this in twice like that. So there's a lot of range of motion that you can achieve by this. The wrists, 360 degree rotating motion here, and then there's plenty of wobble back and forth. One thing that I'll have to say is this elbow pad area is extremely loose. It just comes off like this. And every single time I try to pose this thing falls off, so I have to reattach it. So keep that in mind. And about the torso and the abdomen region up here, you get some interesting movement that I have not yet seen before on a Space Marine action figure. You can kind of pull this forward like this. It's almost like a double hinge mechanism somewhere in here, but you're not actually allowed to achieve that much motion up top here. There's a slight wobble back and forth, as you can see here. And about the abdomen and the hip areas where you would get that 360 degree motion that we're all used to on our action figures, like this. There you go. With this Bandai action figure, this is kind of interesting to me. It's almost like a double jointed, but that's not really how you would describe it. So you have some motion that can be achieved with this inner ring right here. And then out here, you have more range of motion as well. So there's another joint down here, which is very different from what we've seen in Joy Toy and McFarlane. But you can get 180 degrees of motion, as you can see with the legs, and kick it out back. So there's plenty of motion there. And then with the knee area, this is basically at full extension, but you can push this back, and then there's a small ratcheting mechanism right here. And then finally, with the ankle area, you can see that there is a ball joint right here, so you can get a little bit wobble back and forth. And then with the toe area, you can also bend this up like this, and this is the maximum extension that you can get. So some of you may ask about the feel of this action figure. Every single action figure has a specific, I suppose, feel to it that I can't really describe, but you know it when you pick it up. So this guy, when I pick him up, he's kind of hollow, I suppose. Compared to the McFarlane as well as the Joy Toy one, it feels like lighter, I suppose. And you get that feeling, especially with this backpack as well as this bolt rifle over here. There's just like this lightness.
So, action figure fans, what did you all think about this Intercessor over here? Obviously, it was the first action figure that was ever produced, and this has a lot of, I suppose, the founding action figure that basically started off this Warhammer action figure craze. So there was a certain sort of like weighty expectation going in. So what do I think about this thing? Well, I mean, it is a very well articulated action figure. I think that it has a lot of things going for it. I really like the amount of detail that they put in the bolt gun. And weirdly enough, the amount of detail that went in the back of the legs of the Space Marine, I think it's more detailed than McFarlane as well as Joy Toy. But I'll be honest with you, I'm not exactly too much of a fan of this guy. He's got a very weird cartoony look. I think it's because of the lenses, how they're set. I have no idea. And then when I was basically doing the B-reel and doing all these different poses, I had a very, very hard time actually trying to pose this guy. In fact, when I was setting this guy up right now for the pose right now, he rocked back and forth. I had to readjust multiple times just for him to stand. And the other annoying thing aside from the posing was that the elbow pads kept popping off constantly as I was trying to pose this guy too. As this is now an older figure and probably fetches a $100 to around $300 price tag, do I actually think this is worth it? Absolutely not. Obviously, the most hardcore action figure Ultramarines fans, this is entirely for you. But for the rest of us, this is probably a pass. So this is Spruce and Studs. Thank you for tuning into this action figure review. I hope you like the in-depth detail that I've given you. And if that's your jam, make sure to subscribe to the channel. And with that being said, I'll see you guys all in the next one.